There are days when you're too exhausted to speak, nights when you collapse into bed, and no one knows how much you've had to hold back just to make it through. Yet you still wake up, go to work, stay kind to others, and smile even when there's barely anything left inside. Maybe you don't think you're strong because you don't shout, you don't rise up dramatically, or win anything grand. But real strength isn't always loud or glorious. It often lives in silence, in the moments you choose to rise without anyone calling your name, in the times you apologize because it's the right thing to do, not because someone forced you, in the decision to remain kind to new people even after old ones have hurt you. We often mistake strength for success, fame, or recognition. But the truth is, if you still dare to be yourself, if you hold your boundaries even when it hurt, if you own your mistakes without excuses, and if you continue to show up for others while quietly struggling, then you are far stronger than you think. And if you've ever felt too fragile to go on, stay here a little longer with these words, because maybe what you need isn't more advice, but simply a reminder. You've already come farther than you realize. And every day, in your quiet, steady way, you're still proving it. So stay with me. Subscribe if this speaks to you. And when you're ready, share your quiet strength in the comments. You're not alone. 1, you've been broken, but you chose to heal. There are moments in life that don't just shake you, they split you open. Not with violence, but with quiet collapse. You lose something, your job, your partner, your sense of direction, and suddenly the world no longer makes sense. I remember standing in my kitchen on a Tuesday morning, jobless, 38, and unable to answer a simple question: what now? I had built a career over 15 years. I was respected, competent, and consistent. But one decision from someone above me, and it all disappeared. Not with a bang, just a slow, cruel silence. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just stood there, frozen, until I chose to move. Healing didn't come through grand gestures or big announcements. It came in the form of going back to school at night, working a quiet part-time job during the day, and relearning what it meant to start from the bottom with dignity. No one applauded. No one even noticed. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I didn't run from the wreckage. I stayed long enough to rebuild something better. And that's what real strength looks like. Not in how loud you fight, but in how long you endure with clarity and purpose. In the philosophy of Stoicism, we're reminded that while we cannot control the storm, we can always control the vessel. The Stoics never denied the pain. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they all wrote about grief, loss, and betrayal. But they also spoke of power. Not power over others, but power over the one thing that matters most: yourself. Your thoughts, your reactions, your choices when life breaks you in half. Because pain is inevitable. What comes after it is optional. When you choose healing, you're choosing not to be defined by what hurt you. You're saying, this scar is mine, but it does not write my story. I do. And in a world that constantly urges you to move faster, perform stronger, and pretend everything's fine, choosing to pause, to feel, to recover, is an act of rebellion. It's the kind of rebellion that builds unshakable inner strength. You see, strength isn't about how quickly you bounce back. It's about how deeply you learn while you're down. Emotional resilience isn't developed in comfort. It's formed in discomfort. On the long nights when your chest feels too heavy to breathe, you still wake up the next day and feed your children. In the silent mornings, when the weight of failure crushes your ribs, you still show up to work with steady hands. That's not survival. That's transformation. And it begins when you stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? Too often, we mistake numbness for healing. We bury the pain, rush into distractions, and chase the next goal. But Stoicism teaches a quieter, more courageous path. It teaches us to face discomfort, not to escape it, to sit with sorrow long enough to understand what it's trying to teach, to breathe into the emptiness, not avoid it. That's not a weakness. That's wisdom. Because what you avoid doesn't go away, it waits, and what you face transforms. In my own life, that shift happened the moment I stopped hiding my uncertainty and started confronting it. I allowed myself to grieve what was lost. I admitted I was scared. I even allowed myself to feel useless for a while. But I didn't stay there. Slowly, through books, walks, small tasks, and long silences, I found clarity. I stopped measuring my worth by what I had and started anchoring it in who I was becoming. And that's what healing gives you. Not the return of what you lost, but the discovery of who you really are without it. If you're watching this and you've been through something that cracked you wide open, I want you to know this. You are not broken. You are breaking through. You are not weak for feeling pain. You are strong because you didn't let it turn you into someone you're not. You kept your heart. You kept your dignity. You kept your ability to rise. And even if you're still in the middle of it, unsure where healing will take you, keep going. Keep breathing. Keep choosing the next right thing. Not for the world, not for the applause, but because you are worth rebuilding. Because the version of you that chooses peace over resentment, growth over regret, and stillness over self-destruction is already powerful beyond measure. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need a stage. It's the quiet decision made every day to not let the past define the future. It's choosing to carry your wounds not as chains, but as maps. Maps that tell you not where you were destroyed, but where you were refined. So if you've been broken, and yet you're still here, still trying, still hoping, know this: you are already stronger than you think. 2, you keep going, even when no one is cheering. Not every victory is celebrated. Not every effort is recognized. Sometimes the most powerful act of strength is to keep going, even when no one claps, no one thanks you, and no one even notices. My closest friend, a single mother, wakes up every morning before the sun rises. She cooks breakfast, packs lunchboxes, kisses her daughter goodbye, and heads straight into a 10-hour shift, only to finish and head into another job right after. There's no spotlight on her. No one applauds her sacrifices. She never posts about how hard it is. But she keeps showing up, every single day, not because it's easy, but because quitting was never an option. And that's where true strength lives, not in the noise of achievement, but in the quiet discipline of consistency. Society tells us to chase recognition, validation, and applause. But Stoicism teaches us to act with purpose, not for praise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must not seek credit for simply doing what we're meant to do. Because strength isn't about being seen, it's about being steady. It's about staying true to your values even when no one's watching, even when your name isn't called, and even when your sacrifices go unnoticed. The Stoic path is one of inner clarity. You don't act to be rewarded. You act because the action is right. And in the silence of daily effort, something remarkable begins to take shape. You build resilience, not with noise, but with routine. You wake up and do the hard thing again. You honor your responsibilities even when your body aches. You keep a calm mind when frustration claws at your throat. This quiet repetition, this daily decision to show up when it's easier to give up, is what carves out character. That's where real confidence is born, not in applause, but in alignment. You are aligned with duty, with truth, with your own standard of who you want to be. What struck me most about my friend wasn't her endurance, but her silence. She never once asked, "Why me?" She never expected life to feel fair. She understood something most people miss, that the world doesn't owe you validation for doing what is hard and right. The reward is not outside you. It's in becoming someone you respect. Someone who doesn't bend in the storm. Someone who chooses the harder road, not for attention, but because it's the road that leads home. And that's what makes her strong, even if no one ever tells her so. There is immense strength in carrying burdens that others never see, in doing the work without needing to broadcast it, in facing resistance without seeking rescue. It's the strength of character that forms slowly and silently. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, but it is powerful, because when the time comes, when everything around you collapses, you will already have the muscle of discipline built. You won't need to panic, you won't need to perform. You'll simply take the next step like you always do. Calm, quiet, unshakable. If you're the one who always shows up for others, the one who handles things behind the scenes, the one who pushes forward when everyone else checks outlets, this is the recognition you never asked for. You are stronger than you think, not because people see it, but because you've kept going even when no one did. You've been your own motivation, your own support, your own reason to keep rising. That's not just resilience, that's mastery, and it's the kind of strength no one can take away from you. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise a life of ease. It doesn't ask you to avoid emotion or pretend that effort isn't hard. What it asks is that you become a person of principle, a person who acts with intention, who moves with quiet power, and who finds peace, not in comfort, but in control. Control over the mind, over impulses, over the constant craving for validation. Because once you stop needing the world to cheer for you, you start hearing the quieter voice within, the one that simply says, keep going. Maybe that's all you need right now. Not a miracle, not a new path, just a reminder that what you're doing, what you've been doing, is enough. The long hours, the late nights, the emotional weight you carry in silence, they are not invisible. They are the roots of something unshakable, something stoic, something timeless. So when no one claps for you, clap for yourself. When no one sees you, see yourself. When it feels like you're carrying the load alone, remember, it's not applause that builds strength. It's the quiet refusal to give up. And that, perhaps, is the strongest thing of all. 3. You still choose kindness, even after being hurt. It's easy to be kind when life is soft, when people are fair, when the world responds with warmth. But real strength, the kind that doesn't make noise, is choosing kindness when you've been hurt, misused, or betrayed. That quiet decision to remain true to your nature, to not let someone else's bitterness shape your character, is one of the rarest forms of resilience. I used to think kindness came naturally. My mother taught me that being gentle, loyal, and giving was the mark of a good man. For a long time, I believed that was enough, until I gave everything I had, time, effort, trust, to someone I called a brother. When I needed help, he was gone. No reason, no explanation, just silence. And in that silence, I met a side of myself I didn't know existed. For weeks, I played every memory in my head. Every conversation, every late night, I stayed up to help him. And every moment, he didn't return the favor. The anger didn't explode. It sat there, quietly pressing against my ribs. And for a while, I thought about changing, about shutting down, about becoming colder, less giving, more calculated. Because isn't that how the world works? Be too kind, and people will take advantage. Be too available, and people disappear when you need them most. But then I remembered my mother's voice, soft but firm. Your character isn't defined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to respond. I realized I didn't have to stop being kind. I just had to stop offering kindness to those who abused it. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to be a fool. It doesn't tell you to trust blindly or give endlessly. It tells you to act with intention, with wisdom. It reminds you that you are responsible for your actions, not the outcome. You can extend a hand without expecting one back. You can love with clarity, not naivety. Kindness isn't a weakness. Its strength is under control. It's choosing not to become what hurt you. And in a world that often confuses sarcasm for intelligence and cruelty for power, choosing to be kind, even when it hurts, is revolutionary. When you've been wounded, your mind wants to protect you. It wants to build walls, tighten your chest, and make you stop caring. And maybe that's the easy road. But the Stoics would call that slavery. Slavery to your anger, to your pain, to the past. The harder road is the freer one. It's the road where you set boundaries, not barriers. Where you walk away with dignity, not revenge. Where you look at someone who hurt you and say, you don't have power over who I am. That's Stoicism in action. Not cold detachment, but focused compassion. Not naive optimism, but grounded truth. Choosing kindness after betrayal is not pretending the betrayal didn't happen. It's acknowledging it, learning from it, and choosing not to let it rot your spirit. It's saying, I can be wise and still be warm. It's the difference between closing your heart and protecting it. I didn't stop helping others after that experience. I just learned how to be more selective. I started paying attention to reciprocity. I stopped mistaking potential for proof. And I realized that kindness, when paired with discernment, becomes a force you can build a life on. We live in a culture that often glorifies toughness, dominance, and the illusion of not caring. But deep down, we know better. We know that healing doesn't come from hardening. It comes from staying soft where it matters and strong where it counts. Kindness isn't about being passive. It's about being powerful enough to choose grace in moments where bitterness would be easier. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you strong. So if you've been hurt and you still hold the door open for strangers, still check in on your friends, still offer help without being asked, Don't ever doubt your strength. The world might not notice your efforts, but your soul does, your peace does, your future does. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, is a decision to build rather than destroy, to rise rather than retreat, to be better, not bitter. And when you look back years from now, you won't remember who hurt you as much as you'll remember who you became in response. You'll see that choosing kindness wasn't a weakness. It was clarity. It was strength. It was self-respect in its highest form. So stay kind, not because the world deserves it, but because you do. You deserve to live with a heart unburdened by bitterness. You deserve to sleep at night knowing you didn't let darkness win. You deserve to keep your humanity, even in a world that keeps trying to take it from you. That's the kind of strength that never fades. That's Stoic. That's you. 4. You own your mistakes without excuses. It takes real strength to look someone in the eye and say, "That was my fault." No justifications, no shifting blame, no list of reasons why things went wrong. Just a steady, grounded acknowledgement of what you did and what you could have done better. In a world quick to defend pride and deflect accountability, choosing to take responsibility is not just rare, it's powerful. It means you've reached a point where truth matters more than your ego, where growth matters more than looking right, and that, more than any title or achievement, marks you as someone strong. When you own your mistakes, you don't weaken your image, you sharpen your character. You create space to become wiser, steadier, and more respected. People don't lose faith in you because you made a mistake. They lose faith when you pretend you didn't. And deep down, you know this. You've seen it. The colleague who always finds someone else to blame. The friend who never says sorry. The leader who dodges every ounce of accountability. They might look composed on the outside, but inside, they're fragile. Because when you can't face your own missteps, you remain stuck. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But when you stop running from your errors and start owning them, everything changes. You move from reaction to reflection, from shame to strength. You stop wasting energy defending yourself and start investing that energy into becoming better. Stoic philosophy lives here. It reminds us that we are not our circumstances. We are our responses to them. Epictetus said it best. We cannot control everything that happens, but we can always control how we respond. And when your response is, "I was wrong and I will do better," you take back control from your past and put it in your hands again. This isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming someone who never slips, never forgets, never misjudges. It's about becoming someone who is honest enough to grow. And that honesty, when practiced consistently, becomes a form of quiet power. You begin to notice your patterns before they repeat. You pause before defending what no longer serves you. You stop fearing failure because you know now that failure isn't final unless you pretend it never happened. There's a kind of integrity that only reveals itself when you're wrong. It shows up when you speak to your child after you lose your temper. When you walk into a meeting and say, "That mistake was on me," or when you sit alone at the end of the day and whisper, "I could have handled that better." These are not small moments. These are turning points. They don't erase what happened, but they transform who you are moving forward. And the truth is, most people will never do this. Most will choose comfort over clarity, ego over evolution. But the ones who choose responsibility are the ones who eventually rise. Because ownership creates trust, not just from others, but from yourself. You begin to trust your ability to navigate complexity, to lead with humility, to correct course when needed. And you start building a kind of self-respect that doesn't depend on getting everything right, but on doing the right thing once it's revealed. There is also peace in ownership. When you stop blaming others, you stop waiting for them to change. When you stop blaming the world, you stop giving it power over your happiness. You no longer feel like a victim of every situation. You become the architect of your own response and therefore of your future. And in that space, you find calm. A calm that isn't shaken by public opinion, workplace politics, or social pressure. It's the calm of someone who knows they are not perfect, but they are honest. And that is more than enough. So if you've ever looked your child in the eye and said, "I'm sorry," not because you were afraid, but because it was right. If you've admitted your mistakes at work, not for approval, but to rebuild trust. If you've confronted your own flaws, not to criticize yourself but to correct course, then you're already stronger than most. Because the courage it takes to own your failures is the same courage it takes to build a meaningful life. And if today you're standing at a crossroads, knowing deep down you mishandled something, say it. Don't run. Don't numb it with distractions or cover it in excuses. Name it. Own it. Then fix it. That is power. That is clarity. That is how real strength works, not by pretending to be flawless, but by having the guts to face the flaws head on and to walk forward anyway, eyes open, spine straight. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be real. And when you're real, even your lowest moment can become a solid foundation. Accountability doesn't crush your worth, it proves it. So own your mistakes, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to grow through them. 5. You set boundaries even when it hurts. There's a quiet kind of courage in saying no. Not the kind that defies the world with fists raised, but the kind that calmly draws a line, knowing someone on the other side won't take it well. Setting boundaries isn't about control, it's about clarity. And when done right, it's one of the strongest declarations of self-respect a person can make. I once turned down a collaboration that, on paper, looked perfect. Great pay, big exposure, mutual benefit. But something didn't sit right. The values didn't align. The energy felt off. And I knew that if I said yes, I'd be selling a small part of myself. So I walked away. I didn't explain too much. I just said, "This doesn't feel aligned," and stepped back. The disappointment from the other party was real. But so was the relief in my chest. I slept well that night, and I've never regretted it. It's not easy to hold the line when people are used to you crossing it for them. It's not easy to protect your time, energy, and peace in a world that celebrates availability over authenticity. But that's where strength lies, in choosing your inner peace over outer approval, in choosing what's necessary over what's easy. The Stoics were clear. Your time and mind are your only true possessions. Epictetus wrote that we must guard our will as fiercely as a city under siege. Because once you allow others to decide what you give when you give it and how far you go, you no longer live by intention. You live by the reaction. Every time you say yes when you mean no, something inside you shrinks. You trade long-term peace for short-term comfort. But when you begin to protect your space, something different happens. You stop being resentful. You start becoming focused. And slowly the world around you begins to adjust. Some people drift away. Not everyone will understand the boundaries you set. Some will call you selfish. Others will say you've changed. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to honor your limits, not manage their disappointment. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. They don't shut people out, they allow the right people in. They create room for trust, for truth, and for mutual respect. In the long run, they deepen your relationships, not destroy them. Because the people who love you for your yes, but respect you for your no, those are the ones worth keeping. But that clarity only comes when you stop fearing discomfort and start valuing alignment. There's a difference between being kind and being accessible, between being supportive and being available at all times. Strength isn't in overextending, it's in recognizing when you're stretched too thin, and choosing to rest, recharge, and say, "Not today." This isn't about selfishness, it's about sustainability. No one can pour from an empty cup, and no one can serve well from a burned-out soul. Boundaries are how you stay grounded. They're how you reclaim your focus. They're how you protect the parts of you that keep everything else moving. And if you've ever felt guilty for setting them, good. That means they matter. That means you've been conditioned to put others first for so long. It now feels unnatural to choose yourself. But unnatural doesn't mean wrong, it just means unfamiliar. The more you practice it, the more you realize that this isn't distance. It's dignity. You've probably already had that moment, the uncomfortable one, when you turned down an invitation that drained you, when you stopped answering messages past midnight, when you ended a relationship that kept you anxious more than alive. Maybe they didn't take it well. Maybe they called you cold. But you knew, deep down, that saying yes would have been a slow betrayal of self. And even if it stung, even if you questioned it later, that was strength. That was awareness. That was a step closer to becoming the kind of person who doesn't need chaos to feel loved. Stoic philosophy teaches us that freedom comes from self-mastery, not from doing everything, but from doing the right things for the right reasons. Setting boundaries is not rejection, it's refinement. It's asking, what version of myself do I want to live with at the end of the day? And what kind of relationships help me protect that version? So if you've said no lately, not to punish, not to control, but to protect your peace, know that's a kind of strength the world may not praise, but your future self will. Because every boundary you set today becomes a brick in the foundation of a life that feels honest, calm, and yours. And there's nothing selfish about that. There's nothing soft about choosing what makes you strong. 6. You show up for others, even when you're struggling. There's a kind of strength that never asks for recognition. It doesn't shout, doesn't post, and doesn't expect anything in return. It just shows up, quietly, consistently, even when the person behind it is barely holding themselves together. You've seen it, maybe you've lived it. You're hurting, unsure, and overwhelmed. Yet somehow you still check in on someone else. You still send that message. You still show up at the hospital, the funeral, and the late-night call no one wants to answer. That's not a weakness. That's power disguised as grace. Helping others while you're hurting is not about self-neglect. It's about choosing to let love lead, even when your heart is tired. It's the silent decision to make room for someone else's storm, even as your own waves rise higher. And that choice, often invisible to the world, is one of the clearest signs of emotional resilience. Stoicism teaches us that duty doesn't disappear just because we're struggling. Epictetus reminds us that we cannot wait for perfect conditions to act rightly. We act because it's right, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs us something. That's what separates emotional depth from emotional fragility. It's easy to be generous when life is smooth. It's harder when your own world feels like it's breaking. But when you still choose to give, whether it's time, money, attention, or just presence, you prove to yourself that your pain has not hardened you. You remain intact. You remain open. And that openness is a form of discipline, not just emotion. It requires you to rise above your own internal noise and see someone else's need without letting your own struggle consume the moment. I've watched someone break down in private, then step into a room with a warm smile just to make sure someone else didn't feel alone. I've seen someone lend money they barely had because they believed someone else needed it more. These aren't grand gestures. They're the invisible threads that hold people together. And they're made by people who understand something deeper. Strength isn't always about self-preservation. Sometimes it's about presence. But let's be clear, this isn't about martyrdom. It's not about bleeding for everyone around you until you're empty. That's not sustainable. That's not stoic. The key is knowing your limits while still choosing to live within them. It's about discernment, knowing when your presence matters and knowing when to step back to recover. Emotional resilience isn't just about showing up for others. It's about knowing how to show up without losing yourself in the process. There's a stillness that comes from this kind of strength. You begin to understand that helping others doesn't require you to be perfect. It just requires you to be present, fully, honestly, quietly. And in those moments, something shifts. Your own pain feels less suffocating, not because it disappears, but because it now shares space with purpose. And purpose is a powerful anchor when life feels heavy. Stoic thinkers believe deeply in the idea of shared humanity, that we exist not in isolation, but in interdependence. Marcus Aurelius wrote of being a citizen of the world, not a ruler, not a savior, a citizen equal in duty and worth. To show up for someone, even when you're not okay yourself, is to act as that kind of citizen. It's to say, my struggle is real, but so is my responsibility to the people I care about. And if you've done that, if you've held space for someone else's grief while carrying your own, if you've brought calm into someone else's chaos while feeling lost inside, if you've chosen to be kind on a day when kindness felt like a distant memory, then you are carrying a strength most people can't name, but everyone can feel. It's the kind of strength that builds community, that restores hope, that heals without noise. So don't underestimate what it means to show up, especially when it would have been easier to disappear. Don't undervalue the gesture that cost you something invisible. because that cost is also your contribution. And it doesn't make you weak. It makes you steady, clear, real. You're not expected to fix everything for everyone. That's not your role. But if you've shown up anyway, despite the ache, despite the fatigue, despite the silence, you've already done something remarkable. You've proven that pain doesn't get to decide who you are. That resilience isn't just about standing strong alone. It's about reaching out while you're hurting and saying, I'm here, even if I'm not whole. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is the mark of someone truly strong. Quiet, human, and full of light, even in the dark. 7. You stay true to who you are. In a world that constantly tells you who to be, choosing to stay true to yourself is a radical act of strength. The pressure is subtle but relentless. Fit in, blend in, don't stand out too much, don't question the script. And yet some people still choose to walk their own way. My younger brother studied art in a family that only valued degrees with guaranteed paychecks. Everyone said he'd struggle, that being an artist was a fantasy, but he stayed with it, quietly, steadily. No drama, no need to convince anyone. And today he creates for a living, not wealthy, but alive, not famous, but fulfilled. He didn't choose the easy road, he chose the honest one. That kind of decision rarely comes with applause. Most people don't celebrate your authenticity, they resist it, because your freedom threatens their conformity. Your clarity forces them to question the compromises they've made. But that's exactly why staying true to yourself matters. Because it's not just about expression. It's about integrity. It's about refusing to betray who you are for who the world wants you to pretend to be. Stoic philosophy makes this clear. Your only duty is to yourself and your inner standard. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we waste too much time worrying about others' opinions when we should be focused on aligning with our own values. He reminded us that peace doesn't come from approval. It comes from consistency between what we believe and how we live. That's the kind of peace that lasts. And it's the kind of peace you can feel, even in the middle of rejection, judgment, or doubt. Choosing to live authentically doesn't mean you'll never feel insecure. It doesn't mean the path will be smooth. But it does mean you'll never have to wake up wondering if you're playing a role. It means that even on hard days, you know your pain is real, not something you earned by living a lie. That clarity is what makes you resilient, because it keeps your foundation solid while the world shifts around you. I've seen people stay in jobs they hate because someone else told them it was safe. I've watched relationships fall apart because one person was too afraid to admit they had changed. I've seen talented people bury their voices because they didn't want to be labeled differently. But I've also seen what happens when someone breaks that cycle. When someone says, I don't care if it takes longer, if it's lonelier, or if it makes others uncomfortable, I won't trade my soul for convenience. That's not ego, that's clarity. That's the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but endures. It's quiet because it doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't need validation because it's already anchored. And that's the Stoic way. Not flashy, not reactive, just grounded. You learn to be indifferent to praise and criticism alike, because neither defines you. What defines you is the standard you choose for yourself, and whether or not you honor it when no one's watching. And if you've ever done that, if you've turned down a role that didn't feel right, if you've spoken your truth when it cost you popularity, if you've chosen the hard path because it felt aligned with your values, then you've already stepped into a rare kind of strength. You didn't just survive the pressure to conform. You rose above it. You made peace with being misunderstood. And that peace, it's what allows you to move through life with less noise and more focus. This isn't about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's not about being different to get attention. It's about alignment, about not having to fracture yourself just to be accepted. And when you live that way, you attract something different. Not applause, but respect. Not mass approval, but deep connection with yourself and with those who see you for who you really are. Staying true to yourself is not a one-time decision. It's something you'll need to reaffirm over and over, especially when you're tired, especially when it feels like no one understands. But the more you do it, the lighter you'll feel, because nothing weighs heavier than pretending. Nothing brings more freedom than showing up exactly as you are. So if today you find yourself questioning whether it's worth it, whether staying true to your voice, your art, your pace, or your truth is too costly, remember this: authenticity doesn't promise you an easy life, but it promises you a real one. And that, in the end, is more than enough. That is clarity. That is dignity. That is strength. Strength is not always loud. It doesn't wear a cape. It doesn't need applause. Real strength is silent, steady, and often unseen. It's in the quiet moments when you choose healing over bitterness, responsibility over excuses, kindness over revenge. It's when you keep going, especially when no one is cheering. It's when you set boundaries that protect your peace, even if others don't understand. It's when you stand by your truth, even if it costs you comfort. And it's when you reach out to others, even while carrying pain of your own. Each of these signs may seem small on its own, but together they form the foundation of inner strength, emotional resilience, and a stoic mindset that can weather life's fiercest storms. You don't need to become someone else to be strong. You only need to recognize that these quiet acts of courage, done daily, are already shaping the strongest version of who you are becoming. The practice begins now. Use these insights to build your own daily mental discipline. Choose clarity over chaos. Choose presence over performance. And most of all, choose the kind of power that doesn't come from how you're seen, but from how you live. If any of these signs reflect a part of your journey, I invite you to share your story in the comments. Because your story might be the quiet strength someone else needs to hear today. And if you're still walking through the hard part, keep walking. You're not alone. And you're stronger than you think.